Hey, what's up guys? Thank you and welcome back to the channel. A couple months ago, I did a review on the GUNPRIMER Raser. What this is a glass file that's used for cleaning up the nub marks on your Gunpla model kits or any other plastic model kits you have. I would tell you to check it out, but they actually discontinued this model. So today I'm gonna be reviewing the successors. We have the GUNPRIMER Raser 1.5 and the GUNPRIMER Raser Plus. So stick around and I'll tell you which one I prefer and what you should be getting. First off, let's take a look at the Razer 1.5. I've already opened this just so I have a good idea of what it's like. That way I can properly review it for you guys. But without further ado, let's open the box. Sliding on out, we get this cover card right here to protect it. Sorry, it's a little dusty here. Also in the box, we get this certificate of authenticity. I didn't mention it in my last Razer video, but the cards they add with the products look really nice. The one that came with the GUNPRIMER Raser kit looked pretty much like a wedding invitation. And this one is pretty nice looking too. It's pretty much just a certificate saying that's authentic from GUNPRIMER and it's handcrafted. And in the foam block, we get the Razer 1.5. Now the first thing you'll notice is that it's pretty much identical to the original Razer. And to the naked eye, they are pretty much the same thing. The only reason I can tell this is the original Razer is because it's a little worn down on the sticker on top just because I've used it so much. So this we're gonna go ahead and set aside so we don't mix it up. So the main difference between the Razer and the Razer 1.5 is that even though they're both glass files, they still technically have a level of grit to them. So with the original Razer, it had an equivalent grit strength of about 800. So in terms of sanding sticks, that's about a medium, maybe medium to coarse. The Razer 1.5 has a grit strength of 600, but at the same time, it still leaves that glossy finish that we see with the original Razer. I don't know how they do it, but it looks good. So with a cutting power of 600 grit, what that means is this is gonna cut faster and it's gonna cut easier. One of the things I didn't really enjoy about the original Razer is that it had a tough time with ABS plastic. ABS plastic is pretty much the plastic used for the Gundam frames. The inner gray part that's usually rubbing against each other for the joints, gray stuff like that. But with the Razer 1.5, this cuts through it pretty easily. And it still retains its nice compact shape, fits in the hand relatively well, but that is pretty much the only difference they made with it. So the same price at about $25 US from GUNPRIMER. I think they also have it at stores like Majin Hobby and USA Gundam Store, of course. I actually picked these two up directly from GUNPRIMER. I was up late one night and I saw they were doing a limited release for the new GUNPRIMER Raser Plus. So they were limiting it to 30 pieces, first come, first serve. So naturally I picked it up and I decided I wanted to get the 1.5 with it. So with that, we'll move on to unboxing the Razer Plus. Pretty much the same experience here, except it comes in a wider white box. On the back here, we have some company information as well as the model, tells us what it is and their website. For those who didn't know, yes, GUNPRIMER is a Korean company. So we'll open her up. Now, one thing I noticed is that this didn't come with cards. At least I don't think it did. I might have lost them, but I'm pretty sure that it didn't come with any sort of authenticity card or card to cover the front of it. But it does have the window here so that you know what you're getting. And here we have the Razer Plus. You might find this design pretty familiar. It actually is from the Iron Throne from Game of Thrones. I'm not sure where the inspiration comes from there as to why they added it to the Razer Plus, but I think it still looks pretty cool. Now the big difference you'll see with the Razer Plus is one, it's wider, and two, it's shorter. So here it is right next to the Razer 1.5. Pretty huge difference. They look like Bert and Ernie right next to each other, but there is one other difference they made with this. So as I was saying before, the original Razer had a cutting power of 800 grit, the Razer 1.5 is 600 grit, this one is actually 400 grit. So what that means is this cuts even stronger and easier than the Razer 1.5. I'll try to throw some close-up pictures right now just so you can see the difference in the cutting area for each of them. Once again, to the naked eye, you can't really tell a difference between them. They all look the same on the back just because the small cutting circles on the back are very small, but you can definitely feel the difference when you're cutting apart with them. And that's what we're gonna do today. So I've been working on the Master Grade Verka ball right here, aka God of r/Gunpla. And the last thing I have left to do is the cannon for the head. And I figured I'd use the rest of it for this review. So I'm gonna cut out some parts here, making sure to leave a good amount of nub left. That way we can compare them properly. Now when comparing the cutting power of the razors, there's not much of a time difference. It's definitely more different than sanding sticks, but between the individual razor models themselves, there's not too much of a difference, so I'm not gonna add that in. And let me just show you beforehand this nub right here. That's what we're gonna be using the Razer 1.5 on. So like with the original Razer, you don't wanna put too much pressure. I'm actually using a pretty steady back and forth motion, pretty much using the weight of my hand against the file. And there we go. As you can see right there, it's pretty shiny, no scratches, and perfectly eliminated. Now for the Razer Plus, we'll take a look at this nub right here, and you'll probably notice that it's gonna get finished a little faster, but not too much faster. I usually like to brush the dust off with an old toothbrush head, and there we have it. Just as shiny, just as flat. So another good thing about these kits that I forgot about, because the pores on the back are much wider, that also means they're a lot easier to clean. With the original Razer, I found myself having to bring it to a sink to kind of wash out all the plastic dust. But with these, because they're wider, I just use this old toothbrush head and I'm able to brush it out pretty much 90% of the way clean. So both of these are pretty much my new favorite tools in my kit. For the entirety of the master grade ball, I pretty much just cut each part once, and then I sanded down the nub with one of these razors. Now you're probably asking, if the Razer Plus is faster and easier, why would I get the 1.5 still? That's kind of a hard question to answer, and it's more personal preference than anything, but one answer I could come up with are specific nubs that you can't tackle with the Razer Plus. Let's use this one as an example. So the Razer Plus could get in there, but it also has a huge amount of surface to the left right here where it could be rubbing up against that edge. On the other hand, the 1.5 gets there and there's a lot less surface that it could be potentially rubbing against. So that's just one of the examples that I found while trying to decide which one of these is better. Another example is if you have a nub where the Razer Plus just can't fit well. So we'll use this part as an example again. This is kind of a bad example because there is a raised edge on here. But imagine this pipe was completely flat and you wanted to use one of the razors on it. As you can see here, the Razer 1.5 would fit in that slot pretty well. There's a good amount of wiggle room to the left and right. However, the Razer Plus does not fit in there at all. So the Razer 1.5 is more accessible to tighter areas, but at the same time, in most scenarios, I found that I would have to use a hobby knife to trim those nub marks as well. So in those cases, I didn't use either of the razors. Another reason why you might choose one over the other is their ergonomics. So I got pretty used to the 1.5 out of the box just because it's the exact same shape and size as the original Razer. The Razer Plus was kind of strange to use just because it was wider and shorter. But over time, I found myself grabbing the Razer Plus more often. This might be because I have bigger hands, so it's easier for me to hold, or it could also be that it's larger and it has a more stable surface area for larger parts. For example, we'll take this part right here. We have this nub mark on this large flat surface right here. So with that flat surface, once we get close enough to the nub mark, we can actually use it to stabilize it. And as long as we're passing very lightly, we can get a more consistent cut with the nub mark. So here's what that looks like. So between the Razer 1.5 and the Razer Plus, it's hard to pick, but if I had to choose just one, I would probably get the 1.5. I think overall it's more versatile and it can be used in more areas, but it still gives you that strong cutting power. Now for the Razer Plus, I would probably recommend this for people who already have a razor and they want something that's stronger, but in an ideal situation, I would recommend them both. I know it's a little pricey to get both of them, so I would say get the 1.5 first and the Razer Plus along the line, but I think combined, both of them kind of cover all the bases. So like I said, I usually find myself reaching for the Razer Plus first, but then if I'm removing a nub and I find that there's a little bit left, I end up finishing it off with the 1.5. Plus with the Razer Plus, you get the cool Game of Thrones design. So that's all I had on the new Razer products. So that's all I had on the two new Razer products today. I think they're both welcome additions to any builder's toolkit. Shout out to GUNPRIMER for working on their product and making it better. I think it's awesome that they even discontinued the original because that's pretty much like them saying, hey, our original product wasn't good enough and we don't want to sell that anymore. We made something better and we want you guys to try it out. And they really did make two much better glass files. I know in my last video I talked about how you could find glass files on Amazon for pretty cheap, but at the same time a majority of them don't have the proper cutting power you would need for gunpla. You may be able to find 1 or 2 out there after some trial and error, but by the time you spend all the money on the 2 to 3 different glass files, you could have spent that money and gotten a GUNPRIMER Raser already, which is meant for gunplay. So I highly recommend picking one of these up, either the Razer 1.5 or the Razer Plus. Both are a great buy, it doesn't matter which one you pick really. But anyways guys, if you liked the video, go ahead and click the thumbs up and let me know down below what other tools you want me to review. I know when I was starting out, I was really hesitant on what tools I would want to buy, so I would always look up reviews, and I want to be that same kind of help to you guys. So if you're finding yourself struggling with nub marks and you can't seem to get good at sanding, pick up one of these Razer files and start building.